Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is episode 19. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have misophonia. This week I've got Lindsay from Los Angeles. Miso has been a big part of her life since childhood, as it has with many of us. And it's run in parallel with a lot of other issues she's had to deal with and seek therapy for. This is a really interesting conversation about how she's worked to overcome much of that, to be in a much better place now, and how all these issues have intertwined and affected relationships with others. We're in the midst right now, as you probably know, of a global pandemic known as coronavirus or COVID-19. I hope you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. Many of us are living under quarantine, limiting our interactions with others, and living under the new term of social distancing. We're also advised to be careful of coughing, since the virus spreads through droplets, and some are fortunate enough to experience working from home for the first time. Now, it might be too soon or weird to think of the positives from this situation, but I can't help to hope that some of the measures being taken now turn into trends in the future that'll make life easier for us people with misophonia, being more mindful of coughing, more open to working away from other people, and social distancing maybe becomes sonic distancing. Let me know what you think on social about how you're handling coronavirus and how it's affecting your miso. Are you finding your world quieter and with less triggers? Or are you more stressed out right now, and so this might be exacerbating your condition? We're on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast, or on Twitter at Misophonia Show. Let me know what you think. But for now, stay healthy and enjoy my conversation with Lindsay. Lindsay, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Adil. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Like, whereabouts are you located?
Sure. I am located in Los Angeles County, California, Southern California.
Excellent. Yeah, I used to be in San Francisco for many years, so definitely miss
Nice.
California.
Where are you now?
Now in St. Paul, Minnesota. A
Okay.
little bit colder, but
Nice.
much more affordable too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go back. Like, how long have you had misophonia, or as far as you can remember?
My earliest memory, I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, sitting at the breakfast table with Dad, and hearing the sounds of him drink his coffee and have his breakfast. And I just remember feeling so miserable inside, like I had to escape. And although I don't remember, now that I speak with my sister and my mom about it, they tell me stories of me being a little bit older, 10 to 13, and getting angry at them. Specifically, my sister, me telling her, "Can you stop chewing so loudly?" And me getting really upset at her, and her just feeling kind of trapped. Like, what am I supposed to do? So
Yeah.
for them to tell me those stories and me not remember them, it's like, okay, my family's well aware.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, that's not uncommon at all. That, dad in particular, the family in general, dad in particular, was your relationship okay with your dad at that point? I mean, it was kind of young, I'm sure.
It was, so I can talk a little bit about growing up.
Yeah, please.
I was born and raised in Southern California, specifically Los Angeles County, and my parents divorced at 6. So I was raised in 2 families. They lived real close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I split my time between both families. So my relationship was decent with both parents. I had step parents growing up as well, and step siblings, and my sister and I, and it was just kind of just trying to fit in with everyone and figure out what my role was in the family. And but as far as my relationship with my parents, it was okay. It was clear to me that they cared about me and they wanted the best for me.
Yeah, so all things, I mean, yeah, despite all things considered, as good as it can be at in that situation.
Yeah.
And so you remember your dad? Okay, your dad's triggering you at around 7. Oh, how did you react at that point? You were would you tell him anything at that point, or did you remember acting out? I know
The
your mom and sister told you stuff later on. I'm wondering if your dad remembers anything from that time.
Yeah, so that's not a conversation I've actually circled back with my
Mm,
dad, and I I guess I would ask him at this point in my life if he remembers what he remembers. I haven't had that conversation with him yet, but I remember I do remember having an outwardly emotional reaction, whether it's leaving the table or getting upset, yelling.
yeah.
Um, but my memory is a little fuzzy. It's been a while.
So then at some point your sister and your mom were triggering you, or they just kind of it was mainly your sister and then your mom's helping bring the memories back.
Well, they both have separate memories,
Mm,
and their memories, I don't have the same memories. There's actually not a
hmm,
lot that I remember through high school,
okay.
as far as family and friends. As far as misophonia goes, I don't have a lot of memories. It was really most prevalent when I started getting in those relationships after high school,
Gotcha.
um, where it was most noticeable because I was really spending that one on one time with another person.
Yeah.
But I guess just to back up a little bit, in in high school, I remember really trying to figure out who I am, trying to fit in, whether it be at home or with my friends. I can remember dealing with mental and emotional issues, including misophonia,
Hmm.
and it was it was probably in my late teens. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder.
Hmm.
So depression and anxiety have both played a major role in my life since I was a teen. So but I didn't get the proper care. I didn't see a therapist. I'm not even sure I talked to my parents about it or my friends. And so
And so
dealing,
you were diagnosed at that point by
I want to say I was diagnosed shortly after. I don't remember when it was.
no, that's
Let's
cool.
say
That's cool. Yeah.
teens, when I actually brought myself into the doctor to ask those questions.
Hmm.
But I know since I was young that I've been dealing with those sort of issues.
So by the time you brought yourself to that point where you would you'd gone through junior high, you'd gone through high school, was it
Mhm.
affecting your education?
So I was the student who just barely made it,
Hmm.
but I didn't really get in trouble. I didn't really stand out. I just kind of got by in school. So I don't have a lot of memories. I wasn't very involved in school. I don't, nothing really stands out. So just kind of getting by and trying to fit in, I guess, would describe my grade school years.
Gotcha. But so right, so you don't remember like misophonia being a factor that much. Is more there were other things going on. Maybe it wasn't so much like necessarily sounds distracting you in school.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we're right. So you got to your late teens, and bravely went to a doctor to try to ask certain questions, and you got these diagnoses. Was that kind of a revelation to you? Did it start to make some things make sense?
Yeah. It's always nice to put a name to something.
Hmm.
um, and to say, okay, this is a real thing. Someone has a name for it. The anxiety and depression, but at the time I was picking up unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Mm,
So I didn't follow through on the proper care when I was diagnosed originally. So at this point, I'm picking up unhealthy coping mechanisms like
gotcha.
using self-harm. I picked up drugs at an early age. I was 17,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol a little later on, uh,
Mm-hmm.
getting into codependent relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely compulsive behaviors like utilizing food and shopping. Um, I just looking back, no one ever showed me proper coping mechanisms. It's not something that we have in our education system,
No, definitely
uh,
not. Yeah.
right? And it's not.
Not to the
Uh,
extent it's needed. I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And then it's to talk about mental health as sort of a stigma. So if that was, I don't know what it was in my family. My family, we did not talk about mental health. And so I had to find these other ways to express myself and
Mm-hmm.
to feel better. So those were the coping mechanisms that I had picked up, unfortunately.
And so obviously you're dealing with a lot there. And did you kind of like assume that? Well, I guess you probably didn't have an. We'll get to when you found out the name Misophonia, but I'm assuming that you maybe did. Well, I don't want to assume anything, but did you find that the your did you think that your sensitivities were just part of that bundle in some way?
Yeah, so what I've come to find is during these years of using drugs and alcohol, I was really numb to what was around me, which I can imagine includes the sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as I grew a little bit older, let's say into my 20s, I I started noticing it in my relationships. Uh, I had a tendency to get into a relationship and move in with that person really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So being in a close space with a person and not being in a healthy relationship and using these unhealthy coping mechanisms, then I really started to notice these sensitivities that I had to sound. And my first couple relationships, there was no name for it. It just kind of came off from my end as passive aggressiveness, and just uh, not knowing what this feeling is inside of me, and not knowing how to properly express in a healthy way what it is I'm feeling, and not really knowing what the trigger is exactly.
In these early relationships, you're on your own. Did it felt like misophonia? The sound sensitivity was kind of like coming to the forefront. Like, was it kind of like being a really major negative part of these relationships, or was it?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think, I guess I thought at the time that I just really didn't like this person. And
Mm.
so my dislike for this person was showing up in whatever way possible.
So I'm
So
guessing the passive aggressive. Well,
yeah,
were they things like the glare that we all do, and leaving meals early, that kind of stuff.
yeah, just
Yeah.
not knowing how to express, hey, I'm feeling a certain way. Can we talk about this? No, it never happened that way. Not at that
Well,
time.
yeah. Well, even yeah. I mean, a lot of us, regardless of our background, there's a lot of like because we don't know what it is. It's like
Right.
is guilt and there's shame that gets all mixed in. We kind of assume that we're just being immature. Were these the
Yeah.
kinds of things that you were thinking about? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it turns into not only a feeling of hate for that person, but a feeling of hate for myself. Just like thinking, why can't I get this right? Why can't I just be nice to this person? And as a person who was using all these unhealthy coping mechanisms, my head wasn't clear to come to the conclusion that, or to seek help. I guess my head was just so clouded and with hate and worry and shame and guilt and uh,
Yeah, I mean, we know stress amplifies misophonia, and I can only imagine all these other issues that you're dealing with just amplified that much more. I'm sure that was the last thing you needed was misophonia on top of all this stuff, or
yeah,
to kind of
absolutely.
grow. What happened next? Did you find out did you start to find out what misophonia was? Did you do some research or hear about it, or I'm curious where this went next.
Yeah, so I guess it was about 2017, just a couple years ago. And I was in a relationship at the time, and my partner sent me a link to an article and
Classic.
said,
Everyone gets
yeah,
that
right.
link. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an article about misophonia and said, I think this is what you have. And I opened it, and sure enough, that was it. Every bullet point that was
Do
described
you
was
remember which
me.
article that was? I don't mean to like. This is a big moment, so I'm just curious.
I know.
What
You know
article?
what?
Yeah.
Before we got on the call, I tried to look it up. I
Okay.
couldn't find exactly. There's not a lot out there, so
No, no, and they all kind of look the same. It's got some idiot with their hands on their ears, and there's some clickbait title that all. It's just a variation on the last one. So,
it was, yes, something
if you
exactly
find it
like
later,
that.
we'll put it in the show notes whenever this
Yeah,
goes up. But
yeah,
okay,
absolutely. So I'm a researcher, so I instantly went to find everything I could online about it. Its origin. I realized how new it is, and that um, I was like, is this even real? Are they just
yeah,
trying to put a name on it? I still had reservations and doubts about it, but it did feel really good to have a name to it. And at the time, it having those articles and a little bit of information empowered me to share that with my parents and my sister,
yep,
because I hadn't lived with them for many years at the time. So just it didn't come up in conversation. And I was able to say, check this out, I have this. And then that's kind of when the stories came out about them remembering when I was younger. And
mm,
um, so having a name to it was really nice to be able to talk about it with people who I'm closest with.
yeah. I mean, that's
Um,
great. You did that research. I mean, that at least for at that point, it didn't seem like you were too clouded. It seemed like a very lucid and a great bit of research on your part. Did that make you feel? I know for a lot of us, when we find out it has a name, it kind of I don't want to say deadens the. It kind of makes it more bearable a little bit. I feel like.
yeah,
I don't know how far
yeah.
you got in terms of finding out maybe other online communities, but did you get that far? Like hearing about, I don't know, maybe convention or I don't know, Facebook groups or whatnot.
Yeah, so at the time, and I still don't have social media. So
That's
I
not
was,
a bad thing.
yeah, right. So I wasn't able to connect that way. So it
Gotcha.
was a little challenging for me to find information. I think uh, at the time I wasn't able to find any type of support group or
Mm.
convention. It's possible that is the convention every 2 years?
It's every year. There was one year. I mean, it didn't start that long ago, but there was one year that they missed it for some reason. So it might have seemed like every 2 years, but it's
Yeah,
it's an annual
yeah.
thing.
So yeah, I wasn't able to find anything, and I looked for doctors or
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrists who specialize in it. And there's I don't remember names, but there's one here in Southern California, but it was like I didn't have the right insurance and it was going to be too
Gotcha.
expensive.
Yeah.
So I didn't follow through with anything. So my next best shot was to talk to my therapist and my psychiatrist, and no one knows what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I found myself, I had a therapist at the time, and I found myself bringing in paperwork to her. And it was like a one-time conversation, and then it never really got. Oh, I think they gave me some medication, like, here, maybe this will help. And
Really?
so
Okay. Huh.
yeah, and it was, you know what, it was an antipsychotic,
Mm-hmm.
like a really mild antipsychotic, like, here, maybe this will help. And whether or not it helped, I don't know, because I
Like
was,
Thorazine or something like that. Some old school
yeah,
thing. Probably feel
yeah,
like I don't know.
something. And then they never brought it up again, because it's always this awkward thing, like, I found out that I have misophonia, and then they just look at me with the blank stare.
It's great to hear people like you who actually like bring it up at least. I mean, that's a huge step. So
Yeah, definitely in the past couple years, I've realized, especially when it comes to therapy and going to the doctor, I really have to advocate for myself. And if I am the one to educate my doctors about misophonia, or at least throw the word out there so people are hearing it, that's the best I can do right now.
that is amazing. Yep, I
Yeah.
totally agree. And so, okay, so you're just back up a little bit. Your partner at the time, he or she sent this link to you. What were some of the do you know what his or her memories were at that?
So we never really had a follow-up conversation. And
Wait, he gave you this link and you never heard from him again, or?
I don't really remember what the follow-up
Okay,
conversation
gotcha. Yeah,
was. Yeah, so, and I mean, obviously I had expressed some
the glare
disdain
and all that.
towards,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, all of those, about around eating. And so, um let's see. Yeah, so it was kind of like a short conversation about it, like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for sending that to me. That's definitely what I have, and I'll tell my therapist, and try to find the cure for it.
Yeah, gotcha. And so, yeah, I guess we didn't talk about without getting too much into triggers. It was
Hmm.
they're basically mouth and eating food related kind of stuff. I would imagine. It
Yeah,
sounds like,
so
yeah,
at this point, definitely anything to do with eating, drinking. I'm still currently, but at the time I was a college student. So being in the classroom
yeah,
was so challenging for me. And like I said, I don't have much memory in grade school, but as a college student, I definitely have
mm-hmm,
vivid memory of not being able to focus. So once I found once I found out that it was misophonia, I was trying different things I found online, like earbuds or earplugs. But earplugs will drown out a lot of my trigger sounds, but I miss a lot of points in class.
yeah.
So that was really challenging for me, trying to walk that fine line between feeling okay and also being able to still learn in a classroom setting.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, no, especially noise canceling. That could cancel everything out. One thing I heard in one of these interviews. I don't know if it's aired yet, but someone was talking about just going up and putting a micro, like a very a unidirectional microphone right at the front of the class that
Mhm.
basically only picks up the professor's voice. And so
Oh,
maybe
that's brilliant.
recording that, and then if it gets nasty, just get out of there. But leave that, get that recording at least. And it's these microphones these days can be so focused that they can like only pick up what you're pointing at, and kind of like in they use them a lot in like movies and whatnot. That might be one thing that's useful.
Yeah, that's brilliant. One thing I would say about that is missing out on the conversation in the classroom.
Yeah,
Um,
gotcha.
I the school I'm at now, we have really small classroom sizes, so a lot of the classes are focused around discussion and questions.
Mm,
So I could imagine missing out on what other classmates might be saying.
yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
So it's a fine line, but I don't have any more classroom time. I'm in my graduate degree, so
Wow. Okay.
everything is done from home now. So
Well,
um,
okay, yeah. So, and do you think that was kind of by choice that you kind of moved to a more at home kind of environment, or was it just part of the program you're in?
I think it was just a part of the program I was in, because I really do think that I learn better in a classroom setting, and being able to be engaged in those conversations. That's part of what I really love about going to school and
Hmm.
learning. So it's really disappointing when something that I love so much is painful to me. So like being in a classroom, I love educating myself, and I love talking to other people about these topics, and it's painful. It's really difficult.
Have you thought about what you want to do after you're done with school, in terms of the environment you want to be in, or
Yeah,
do you have a
yeah,
choice and whatever you career you
yeah.
want to go?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that, and my goal, I want to serve LGBTQ populations,
Hmm.
primarily to support homelessness and mental health. So I don't know what kind of setting that will bring me into. It might be an office setting, but I think that's really going to be again about advocating for myself and asking for what I need in terms of accommodations. Right now, I'm in a great office setting where it's it's relatively quiet and I work very independently, so I'm able to put those earbuds in and put some music on or some white noise and just get to work. So hopefully, whatever I do in the future will be as accommodating.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, the classroom setting is not usually like the day-to-day work environment. You're not,
Yeah,
and so I think it'll yeah, I think it'll get better, and especially as you're one to advocate for yourself. I think no, I think that should be good. Um, who knows? We'll see. I don't want, I don't want to.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
How far away are you from finishing school, do you
I
think?
graduate in May.
Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. Wow,
Yeah, I'm
close.
so close. I'm
Yeah, this
so
is
close.
great. Yeah, so outside of school, yeah, we last left you off at in the middle of these codependent relationships, and
Yeah.
your last partner or former partner had opened your kind of helped open your eyes to misophonia. How's the rest of your life going right now?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, that was in 2017 when
Yeah.
I found out the name of misophonia. So continuing to have conversations about it with my family, particularly my mom and my sister. I feel really comfortable talking to
Mm-hmm.
them about my mental health. And um, let's see. So fast forward to 2018, last year, within a 6 month period, I decided it was time I had to stop drinking and using drugs. It was
Mm-hmm.
a really big problem at the time. This was early 2018. And so I started attending a support group for that. Um, And getting sober, I was able to build up the courage to end that relationship that I was in. It was pretty toxic at the time. We were
Mm.
4 years into that relationship, and I was able to end the relationship. I started the full-time job that I'm in now, and I started my graduate program. So a lot happened in 6 months.
Yeah.
A lot of
Positive things. Yeah,
yeah, a
yeah.
lot of really positive things that are changing the trajectory of my life. And in that same note, that left me open without all my coping mechanisms to really intense misophonia experiences, um,
Mm.
really intense mental and emotional experiences and challenges. So I so here I am without the drugs and alcohol, and I'm dealing with my depression and anxiety again, wrapped up with misophonia. And I finally went back to the doctor, and I was diagnosed again, same thing. But I said, okay, I need to really start receiving proper support and care, um, medication, regular therapy, regular doctor visits. And it was late 2018, just about a year ago, where I connected with my current partner. So we're 1 year into our relationship, and this has been my opportunity to really, in healthy ways, communicate what's going on with me. Um, Misophonia has definitely been one of our big topics. I was
Mm.
really fortunate. He attended the conference with me this year in Denver, and that meant so much to me. Like, this is a relationship like I've never had before. I went into this relationship really intentionally saying, okay, I have all these issues and you have your issues, so let's talk about it. And that's something I never knew how to do before, as I was using all these unhealthy coping mechanisms in the past. So being able to talk about it as it's happening, so that I'm not holding it in, is really an incredible feeling, whether that's with my therapist, with my partner, with my family. It's all new to me. And I can't believe it. After I'm 33 years old now, so after so many years of
Mm-hmm.
this buildup, um, it's I'm finally figuring myself out, after trying for so many years to figure out who I am. It's really incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. So 2018, huge pivotal moment, well, year in your life. So when you went into your program,
Hmm.
it sounded like misophonia and a few other things were becoming more acute
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because I had mentioned earlier using drugs,
yeah, to kind of
alcohol.
cloud things, right? So
Yeah, yeah. And so now everything is very clear.
yeah,
And it's like, oh, yeah, I live with anxiety
yeah,
and I have misophonia. Like, that's very
gotcha.
clear to me now. So, really, it being really in my face. And um, I'm trying to be really honest with the people around me. Misophonia is still a fine line that I walk. I don't know how to have those open and honest conversations with everyone, like my friends, my coworkers. I don't really know how to have those
There's
conversations
no
without.
script. There's kind of like a script for a
Yeah.
lot of other things, and we're kind of like shooting in the dark.
That's right, absolutely. And so, like I mentioned, I want to advocate for myself, but I don't want to burden anyone. And
Yeah, that comes back to the whole shame, guilt kind of stuff. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's still there. It's still there.
So wait, you entered a relationship about last year. How long did it take for you to bring up misophonia?
I think I
Was there
went
a sound
into.
and you're like went into a rage and that's how it started, or was it okay, before anything happens, I want you to know.
I think it was that that second
Oh
option.
wow, okay. Very
I
mature, very mature. Excellent.
I know it's so unlike me, but I went into this relationship really, really intentionally to
Mm,
say, I'm going to share everything with you because I knew that I was, if I'm going to be with someone, they need to accept me for exactly who I am. And they're not going to know who I am unless I tell them. So those were my intentions, to be really honest. And it's not always perfect. It doesn't always go perfectly, but I did share my my experience with misophonia very early on, and we're still learning how to communicate about misophonia to each other. There are some things that I still hold inside
yeah.
because I'm still trying to navigate what's appropriate to talk about and what's not, and what I can deal with and what I can't.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of work. It really is.
Amazing that it sounds like your partner was at the convention. That's great.
He was, and that was a really big deal for both of us. It really meant a lot that he would be willing to just go and learn, because I'm learning a lot in the process as well. You know, we have talks about starting a family in the coming year,
Hmm.
and so what that might look like. Neither one of us have children, so if we have children, what does that look like? What would meals together look like?
Yeah.
And one thing I really appreciated about the conference this year is one speaker had mentioned reimagining what family time looks like. You know, people, I imagine a family dinner where everyone is talking about their days, and that's the bonding time. But I have to reimagine that because that might not be realistic for my family.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is the traditional sitcom, sit down, or drama, sit down, and here everybody's spoons and forks and eating, and then there's the more general after school family time, which meal could be just one part of it. It's also, hanging out in the living room. It's being in the kitchen for a little bit. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Because I mean, for a lot of us, some of us, I was talking to somebody, and he's a dad who just kind of like he's got to deal with his family. He's got not to deal. He's got an arrangement with his family where he just kind of he they eat at the table. He stands kind of between the kitchen and the dining room and eats standing up.
Mm, okay.
Where it's just he's still there, still engaging, but if he needs to, he can just take a lap around the house and come back, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And those are the things that my partner and I are thinking about. It's really, really important for me to have these conversations now because I want to live a long, healthy life and have a healthy family, and not. I'm trying to understand all of these mental and emotional issues as best I can now before I
yeah,
go into that next chapter.
that's really smart. Yeah. So yeah, so in your conversations with your partner, have you come to any like strategies that you're gonna goals that you're going to try to achieve from a miscellaneous perspective, or still just kind of like gathering information?
Yeah, I think we're somewhere in between the gathering information phase and talking about what it might look like. But I really just I don't know what dinner time will look like. He and I have very different schedules anyway. I'll
Mm-hmm.
probably work the classic 9 to 5, and he works different hours. So it might it might be that we don't have that time together anyway, but I think a lot of it's going to be learn as we go.
Yeah.
So, but in the meantime, while it's just the two of us, and we don't live together yet, but when it's the two of us, there's just certain foods that we don't eat together.
Yeah. 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 No, and that's good to at least have that awareness now, and so it's not weird later or
Yeah,
anything you
it's
have to come up with. It's just like, okay, this is just the next step.
absolutely, yes.
Do you have any visual triggers, by the way? Just to kind of jump around a bit, but
If I, for
I was
instance,
thinking about the fact that you were in, well, you're still in school. You might be at home more, but I was curious if you, I don't know, try to sit at the front of the class or the back of the class, or eh, based on any visual triggers.
yeah, I like to sit in the front of the class. It's less distracting. Um,
That's probably would have been my choice too. Yeah.
yeah, my classroom sizes are so small now that I I only have one class this semester and there's only three of us in the class. So it's a
Hmm.
very different type of setting,
Yeah.
but as far as visual triggers, if I see something, if I see a food that I know makes noise, let's say it's a bag of chips or an apple, I'm waiting the entire time for that person to pick up that food and eat it.
Yep.
I'm not focused on anything else, just that food.
Yeah, because that food, that act is going to somehow destroy you completely and kill you. That's what your brain is telling you. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
it's just anticipating that sound. Um, Unfortunately,
absolutely. So other visual triggers might just be the open mouth, kind of messy
right, right,
eating.
yeah.
Visual triggers. Um, there's certain ways of eating.
Mm-hmm.
Throwing food into the mouth. Let's say someone's eating grapes and they're throwing the grapes into their. I don't know. There's something about the
Okay,
throwing of
yeah,
the
yeah,
food.
yeah. We can go right. Yeah, we can go on and on. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, typical visual triggers.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a couple other things that yeah, that's noted down. So you said that, okay, so you obviously very open with your family and your partner. Tell me again about like friends. As you're socializing, does it? You may have covered this before, but does it? Do you are you proactive with them as well? Do they know? Do many of your friends know, or do you tell new people?
So my primary group is the folks that I met in this recovery program that I'm a
Hmm.
part of. That's my main support system outside of
Gotcha.
family, and I've shared with them as a group about misophonia, but it never. I don't really have the one-on-one conversations.
Gotcha.
Um, I do have a friend. I spend some time with her. She's one of my primary sources of support, and she knows, but it's it's let's say I'm triggered by some noise. It's hard for me to just point it out right away.
Yeah.
But so when the conversation does come up, it's kind of like an awkward exchange. I know she wants to support me and I know she's here for me no matter what, but I I don't know. It's just hard to have the conversation like, "Hey, I'm triggered right now. Can
Yeah.
we work through this in another way or whatever that might look like?"
Right.
So it always ends up some kind of awkward laughing situation.
Right. Yes. Many people listening, I'm sure, have been in similar situations like that, awkwardly laughing through a trigger. Yeah, interesting.
Although
Yeah.
Although I will say, laughing about it for me does
Yep.
decrease the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something I've heard as well. And then I use it as well. Is just try to use humor in whatever
Yeah,
dark humor, like self-deprecating humor, but whatever it takes.
yeah,
And that probably just tells your brain that okay, this is neither a fight or flight situation.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
funny.
Just being able to talk openly about it. is, there's some power in that. It's pretty amazing.
Well, cool. Lindsay, yeah, this has been great. We've gone over a lot, and you've been through a lot, and I'm glad that things, at least since 2018, are turning around for the better, and you're going out of your way to learn about misophonia. Do you have anything other things you want to tell people who don't
Yeah,
have people to talk to about?
I just want people to know that they deserve to feel good and they deserve to take care of themselves and seek support and advocate for themselves. As we've mentioned, misophonia is relatively new. There's not tons of research yet, and support systems, they're out there. So seek support, advocate for yourself, tell your friends and family, because a lot of the times I think our friends and family surprise us with how
Mm.
supportive they can be. So yeah, everyone deserves to feel safe and happy and supported. So it's out there. Go find it.
Yeah, and that's important that we're not to make it a sports reference, but we're Miss One is really in the early innings. So don't be discouraged if you get blank stares back, or people don't know what you're talking about. There is a change. There's a change happening, and I strongly believe like 5, 10 years down, looking back, hopefully just 1 or 2 years down, people will look back and be like, wow, man, nobody knew it, and now everyone's talking about it, or people are just generally aware of it. Already
Yes,
you see a lot of sensory friendly nights at like museums or even grocery stores. Things are happening, and so don't be
yes.
discouraged. There are people like you out there, and there are resources, and they're growing. So things, knock on wood, will are looking up.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say, Adil, I really appreciate you creating this space for people to talk about their experiences with misophonia because there- there's not a lot out there. So you're creating a really amazing outlet for people to seek support, whether they're speaking on your show or listening to your show. So you're doing an amazing thing.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's the whole point of this. There's no real script here, as you can probably tell from my random questions. But it's just, yeah, we're just trying to create a space, just trying to get it out there. And it's more like a misophone talking to other misophones. A lot of times it's like somebody writing an article with a really bad picture and a really bad clickbait headline, and I just wanted to create something that's like to kind of almost try to simulate or emulate the kinds of conversation that we have at the convention, just kind of like people talking to each other outside of the sessions, because
Yeah,
I think that
absolutely.
seems to help a lot. Thanks, Lindsay. This has been great, and I wish you well.
Oh, thank you, Adil. Thank you so much. I'll be in touch.
Thanks so much for listening. Please find us on social media at Misophonia Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, or Twitter at Misophonia Show. Tap the rating review button and give us some stars on Apple Podcasts if you can. It bumps us up in their recommendations so that more sufferers get to hear these stories. For now, stay in, stay safe, and enjoy the silence during these unusual times. Until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.